Hello.
Hello, everyone. Hey, Nathan, how are you?
Doing good. How are you doing?
Very good. Thanks for being here on the show. The idea is to talk about HolmesGPT using Azure AI and HolmesGPT as an AI assistant for AKS, Azure Kubernetes Service, all the alerts. And let's deep dive and tell me in one sentence, what's HolmesGPT?
Okay, so HolmesGPT is an AI assistant or copilot for responding to cloud alerts. And today we're looking at that in the context of AKS and using Azure AI. And if I can add on one more sentence on that, like, why does any of this matter? Why would anyone want that? Well, the traditional way of doing on call is that you get an alert and the first responder has to go off and they have to pull in a whole bunch of data. They look at the alert, then they look at logs, they look at graphs, they look at metrics, traces. They pull in all this data and they build an understanding of what's going on. Then they try and figure out why is that occurring, and then they go off and they fix the problem. And that process takes time. And every minute that you spend investigating there, that's like potential downtime, right? And that's time that the service is impacted and not delivering full value to your customers. So if you could go and you could shave 30 minutes off of the response time for every single incident, right? Every single time that you have an alert or someone gets paged, you could restore that service 30 minutes faster. That would be a no-brainer. And the reason that's so easy is because I can tell you in advance when you have an alert on Kafka, I can tell you in advance, like exactly will you go off and look at to investigate Kafka. You have an alert on an AKS pod that's in crash loop backoff. Like I can tell you in advance exactly what data you would go off and you would look at to investigate that alert. So using AI, it's actually really, really trivial to surface up that data and just put it in front of the first responder the engineer who's responding to that alert to shave 30 minutes off that investigation time.
Sounds good. Sounds good. And who is Nathan? If people don't know who you are, which company you work for, and we're going to see your product, HolmesGPT is an open source project
So
that's growing in the market. And you want to see more about that? Tell me who
yeah,
is
so
Nathan?
I'm Natan.
I'm
First of all,
not Nathan, sorry.
I know I go by both. That's okay. First of all, I'm a dad to 1.5-year-old toddler who keeps me very busy, um, and a husband. And then in the work area, then I'm the CEO of a company called Robusta Dev, and we developed that AI agent. The core of that is open source, and we also develop and sell our commercial platform around that. And we work with some really big companies and some fast growing startups and scale ups who want to really respond faster while still having relatively small teams. So, like typically for us, is a company has platform engineering or a DevOps or SRE team that is probably the sweet spot for us is probably around I'd say 10 to 20 people, and they're typically tasked with like maintaining a huge footprint of like Kubernetes or OpenShift clusters and supporting all the developers on that and kind of supporting the on-call practice and helping to investigate issues that occur. And then very often there's like a migration down the road and they know that like the amount of Kubernetes clusters will double or triple or quadruple in the next 2 years, but their team size will have to remain the same. And then for those teams, it's not just a nice to have. It becomes really like how can we possibly function with 4 times as many clusters and like as much infrastructure that we're supporting in engineers and application teams? How can we possibly support that with the same team size? And then they turn to automation, to AI to really automate a lot of that process. So that's typically what we're looking at, like what we deal with on the commercial side and the companies that are looking to make active investments in bringing in tooling around those areas. But we also work with a whole gambit of organizations from very big to very small. Probably our biggest is a Fortune 500 company. Our smallest is like a 2-person startup, and we have an open source that everyone gets started with.
That sounds good. I'm going to share your screen. And I know that you prepare some, demo for us and some demonstration. I have some questions as well along the way. But that's it. Then I think you have how Azure AI and HolmesGPT can be that assistant for AKS alerts.
So I'll go through the title and just explain a few parts of that and give an agenda on what we're going to talk about. So everything today that you'll see will use Azure AI. You could, so like when you use AI to investigate stuff, you need some large language model that you can use. For us, that's pluggable. And today we're going to be showing how you can use Azure AI to do that, which is really cool because we're also going to be looking at an AKS cluster, Azure Kubernetes service. So you're using Azure to troubleshoot Azure, which will be very cool. HolmesGPT is our open source project. We'll look at HolmesGPT and we'll look at the full platform that we built. So we'll look at both the open source and the commercial parts, and I'll differentiate, of course, which is which. And we're looking at that as an AI assistant for AKS alerts. Specifically, we're going to be looking at Prometheus alerts on an AKS cluster, and we're going to see how you can troubleshoot that. But before we dive into the demo, before we go into that, I think it just pays again to like go into why would you want to do this? Why should you do this? Who should do this? Like, who should be listening to this and thinking, oh, well, actually, maybe this is interesting for us, and who is this not relevant for? So the main goal here, like on why any of this matters, is that if you're an organization that has an on-call practice or has a production system where you have alerts, and when those alerts fire, that potentially has an impact on your customer. The traditional way of doing things, and I'll go up here just a tiny diagram. The traditional like on-call practice is you spend a lot of time on alerts, right? Alerts come in, someone gets routed to the right person. Maybe you go through different tiers of support. Someone takes that alert and they run an investigation process. So they fetch logs, they look at metrics, they maybe look at some organizational runbooks, like in a Confluence page. They look at the internet, possibly they run some kubectl describe commands if it's a Kubernetes cluster. Maybe ask a teammate if they're stuck. And you run this investigation process and you pull in all this data. And a big part of your job is just gathering up the right data so you can understand what's going on, and then so you can remediate it. That's your traditional on-call process. And the problem with that is like you actually spend the first 30 minutes of an alert or an incident or a page just gathering up data. And that data gathering process, you could just completely automate. It's like imagine you get an alert, and then in the first 30 seconds, you've shaved off 30 minutes from the investigation. In front of you is that alert alongside the relevant graphs and logs and so on. So that's exactly what we do. We, using AI, just surface up the relevant data. And I'll show you another 30 seconds, I promise. I'll get to a demo and I'll show that. And the result of that is you have an alert, and here we'll look at a Prometheus alert on an AKS cluster, and we use AI to gather up all the relevant data, and then we send that result to Slack or to the UI, and we'll look at that. And the impact of that is that you can spend less time on alerts. In kind of professional SRE times, you can reduce the mean time to response, or the MTTR, and you can also reduce the chance that you're going to miss an important alert because investigating each alert takes too long, and then you sometimes miss the important things. And again, why does all this matter at the end of the day? Well, tech never matters. Like what matters is the value we deliver to our customers. But your customers want reliable services from you. If there's an incident, they want you to restore that service as fast as possible. You want to discover problems and restore them before the customers complain about them. And all of this serves that purpose.
That sounds exciting. I wanna see that working. And
well, everyone has skepticism about AI, so maybe share your skepticism, and then we'll show that demo.
yeah, everyone has AI, but I think the secret will be the kind of data that you're going to research, you're going to get, you're going to treat this data to be using AI. Not just that everyone can use AI anywhere, they can have access to AI, but there's so much data, logs and information metrics on those, on any log system. And I think the secret is how to get the data that you want, that you needed. And I want to see that how I can show that value for us.
So I'm going to start with the open source, and then
Yeah.
I think that would be a really good way to show why this works and to answer your question. Like, let me start with what doesn't work, okay? Let's say I have a question and I want to know like what pods are currently pending in my AKS cluster and why, right? So I want to take, in this case, not another, just a free text question. I want to understand like what is wrong with a specific issue inside my Azure Kubernetes service cluster. And imagine I go off and I type this into ChatGPT. I'm going to get back a really rubbish answer because how could ChatGPT possibly know, right? Like it doesn't have access to my data, to my environment. I'll get back a generic answer, like to go and investigate, you should run these Kubernetes kubectl commands on your cluster. You should look at these graphs and Grafana and so on. So the core idea here is what sometimes people call an agent-based approach. And what we do essentially is we run this investigation in a loop. So first, I'm going to just send this question over to Holmes. First, what we're doing is we're taking this question, what pods are currently pending in my AKS cluster of mine? We're essentially asking Azure AI, a model in there, in this case, GPT-4o, we're asking it, given this question, what data would I need to gather in order to properly answer that? And it said back to us, okay, well, first, like, go and run this scale command and look for pending pods. And it went off. Let me kind of gonna try. I don't want it to run the rest. Oh, it'll get ahead of me, but okay, fine. It ran off and it went off and it ran this command. And now it feeds it back in inside the loop. And from this command, it found, like when we ran this command and we fed that back in, we found that there's this pending pod, user profile resources in the cluster, right? That's in pending. So now we fed this back in a circle. And now we said to the AI, like, okay, I'm trying to look for pending pods in my cluster. You asked me to run this command to look for pending pods. I ran that command. This is the output I got. Now, what do I run in order to investigate? And now the AI says back, in this case, like again, Azure AI says back, okay, well, now run kubectl describe pod on this specific pod. Like it's an iterative process. So we go off and we do the next iteration. And we do as many iterations as we need, typically around 10 iterations is enough on the most complex investigations, until the AI has seen all the relevant data that it needs. And then we essentially ask it to summarize that data and to give back a response. So in this case, this is pending due to resource constraints, and there's insufficient CPU and memory and GPUs, right? And one of the nodes has also reached its maximum pod capacity. So this pod isn't pending because it can't be scheduled and so on. So of course, I can go from here and ask about how I fix it and ask for remediations, and we'll see all that in just a moment. But the core concept here, again, is that like if I go off and I ask a question like this to just ChatGPT, of course, it has no way of answering. How could it possibly know? But by connecting this to my live observability data, of course, with the read-only access, then we're able to pull in this data into this investigation and give really high accuracy answers and surface up all the relevant data for you. So I hope that addresses a little bit of your skepticism around this.
Yeah, no, makes all sense. Then you're not looking for everything. We find out first what what data we needed. And like you said, that's the open source project. You go one interaction at the time. But I'm assuming that your commercial products go another level and try to simplify this process that the open source is doing for you there.
Yeah, so our open source is great for companies, especially large organizations like Fortune 500 size, that want to build this in-house, but they want to take a basis. They want to reinvent the wheel from scratch. And they want to take this approach, but there's already a great open source project out there. So we see some of those organizations take this and then they do some work to integrate that with their own AI models, with their own organizational tooling. We have some people that have integrated stuff like this in PagerDuty, into Confluence, to Jira, into these other systems that they have up and running. And they typically want to kind of build some parts of this themselves. So the open source is great for that when you need that level of flexibility. But for people who just want to get up and running really fast, then we have a SaaS offering. And I'll show you that SaaS offering. And it also has a free tier. So anyone who's watching this can get up and running, and you can run your first investigations for free. And we also have an
before we go there, that's an interesting question here. Like, you are very interested to make partners or other companies to integrate their product with the HolmesGPT open source project, and HolmesGPT to become a very strong open source solution for that kind of use case. Is that what you're looking for? Like, you talk about Jira, Atlassian products. You talk about some companies that could be doing that integration. Is that something that you're looking for? That someone watching this video, and how can you guys support this kind of partnership?
So we review and accept and work closely with people to get PRs merged from some much bigger organizations. And I feel like our team is punching above our weight for the size of company that we are, because we're working with some of the biggest enterprises out there. And For us, the core of what we do is that we want this open source. We invest in this heavily, and we really want everyone to be able to take this open source and for this to become the gold standard for how you investigate whether it's an instance with AI by hooking that up to all these different data sources. So we have people who are taking this and hooking that up to like their Elasticsearch. We'll actually see a little bit around that today by Elasticsearch. We have another big US retailer that has hooked this up to their Grafana cloud. And we're getting all those integrations. They're not all merged yet, but eventually all those integrations will be merged in so that anyone can take this and hook up to all their data sources, to all their on-call tooling. We have out-of-the-box integrations with PagerDuty and AppsGenie and Jira now. And for us, it's like we really want the core engine here in the open source to be useful in as broad of a context as possible. And it's not just on Kubernetes. We have people using it with non-Kubernetes, whether it's with very different environments. This used to kind of be called AIOps, and the term has fallen a little bit out of favor, but using AI to investigate there's an incidents. The problem with AIOps was that it actually is a term that was around before there were large language models and before modern AI, and the technology it used was much weaker and really more about grouping stuff statistically than being able to find the root cause. But we really want this to emerge as that de facto standard, and we're working with some of the organizations that are taking this and adopting it, that give us the sign that we're in the right direction on that.
That sounds great. And if someone just want to get, started, get using that with your commercial product, that's probably going to jump in now and show us how
So
will be the commercial offer on top of this.
Yeah, I hesitate with the word commercial. It's our proprietary, it's our SaaS offering, I should say. But we do have a heavy free tier on this as well. So let me get started. And I'm looking here at a bunch of Kubernetes clusters, and I have here an OpenShift cluster as well. And I want to just focus on this cluster here running on AKS. And I can see that on this cluster, I have 10 firing Prometheus alerts right now. So I'm going to just jump over here, and I can see here as an example, like let me just extend this maybe to the last 24 hours. And I can see here when each alert started firing. So for example, here a Kafka alert started firing. At this point in time, at 6 o'clock last night, this kube deployment replicas mismatch alert started firing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just like click in, and I'm going to look at one of these Prometheus alerts. So this is just, I added a webhook receiver to Prometheus. I'm sending a copy of those Prometheus alerts to the SaaS platform. And I'm opening this up, and here's the typical Prometheus alert. So this is like all the data you would have from Prometheus itself that you would get in PagerDuty or AppsGenie or Slack or Microsoft Teams, or wherever you're receiving those alerts today. And what we can do is we can add on to this that the result of that investigation can put you 30 minutes ahead in that investigation. So I just click here on the root cause tab. First, I get an explanation of the alert, right? So if you have teams that are less familiar with Kubernetes, we kind of break down the terms into slightly simpler English, right? And give an explanation. What does this alert actually mean? Then we run an investigation. So here, it looked at the deployment details, and it found that this deployment is configured to have one replica, and there's a bash command running in this, and it needs this deployment environment variable. The pod is in crash loop backoff with 224 restarts indicating repeated failures, and the logs show an environment variable deploy env is undefined, right? So in this case, now we go over to the conclusions. This deployment has a pod in it that's missing an environment variable. It's missing that deploy env, which is causing the container to fail. And that's the root cause of this alert. So we're both gathering up the data to give you the context, and then in some cases, we can even suggest what the root cause is. We view that conceptually as two separate things. One, gather up all the data and put it in front of you, and I can see all the raw data here, so I could like look through and see the result of kubectl describe. I could look at the logs over here. I can look through all that data, see the raw data. And then the other part of that is kind of suggesting what is the root cause and even suggesting fixes. So I have here some next steps, but I can also ask here, how can I fix this? And again, this is going to Azure AI. It's feeding in all this investigation and the results of like that live connection to observability data in my cluster. And now it's giving me these remediation commands that I can use to add on that environment variable. And this
is great because that was probably some people. I saw recently some people post on social media, trying to do this manually, like getting these, these outputs and put it on ChatGPT and on Azure AI and trying to figure out all these things. And here you're doing all those steps already for, and
Yeah.
give you the answer without you have to do anything.
And the best part of this is that it's customizable and you can put in here your own runbooks or company information. So like, let me show you an example of that I have here in Alert, Elasticsearch cluster yellow. And this is an alert on Elasticsearch that says there's like this status issue with Elasticsearch. Elasticsearch itself is not running properly. And what I could do is my team could go in and they could put in instructions like when investigating this Elasticsearch issue, this is how I would go about investigating. Like the Elasticsearch expert in my team would put in this, and then that would be surfaced up every single time that I get this Elasticsearch alert. And here, this is just the default investigation, which like went and pulled with curl some data from Elasticsearch on the health status and so on. But I could put in these instructions and automate this process. So I can teach the AI how my company goes about troubleshooting stuff, or I can feed in the runbooks that I probably already have in Confluence and just drop in the link there to them. And it'll go off and now automate the investigation process and gather up that data according to exactly how my team would go and do that, or at least according to how the most senior engineer on my team would do it. And even the junior engineers on my team now would see that same data and get a head start when going to investigate.
Yeah, I think that's the next step. Even I have one tough question for you. That's, some people will be watching this and say, hang on, is not the cloud provider is not going to give us something like that in the future, or some of them like Azure, we have AKS AI or something. Once you now have more, instructions that you can provide, now it's going to be kind of ahead of the game. Is that the point of the product itself, or?
So yeah, there's like a three-part answer to that. I think what you're saying is like this is a no-brainer, but like every cloud provider is going to have to go off and do this, right? You're a
Yeah.
startup, you're a step ahead of the game right now, but like surely this will be built into Azure itself in the future and into Google Kubernetes offering. Like everyone's going to be building this in because this is like really a no-brainer on how you troubleshoot incidents. So I have a three-part answer to that. The first part is, I mean, yes, but you want to be ahead of the curve. Like your competitive advantage is that you probably have a small team today or a smaller team than you'd like, and you're asked to support like a huge estate of these Kubernetes or OpenShift clusters. And like if you're a platform team today, like one, you want to have a solution today. So you don't want to just wait until this comes out as in general availability. But two, it's your competitive advantage. Like when all the teams in the world are doing this, when this is widely available everywhere, like of course everyone will be doing it, but like you want to be ahead of the curve because that's your competitive advantage. That's how you beat competitors. That's how you do more with smaller teams. So it could be really advantageous to be an early adopter of tech that can give your company a competitive advantage before the entire industry goes off and adopts some of that. And I can't share organization names, but like we've seen some of even the really big organizations, there's some Fortune 500 companies that are investing in this, either with HolmesGPT or with stuff that they're building internally, which is very similar. And they view that as like a competitive advantage for how they deliver really, really reliable software without having to have like one SRE for every 10 developers like Google or Facebook do. So that's the first part. Like, yes, this might be really broadly available, but the time to market on this is much shorter because this is out there today and nothing like this is out there from any of the cloud providers today. Like everyone has AI assistants that can pull up things from docs. I think we're the only offering out there that is connected to all your observability data, can take in your runbooks and take in all this data. And it's extensible, so you can pull in all that data from different places.
And you, Nathan, it's like kind of, and you don't have to give up from Kubernetes, from Azure Kubernetes service just because it's too hard and you don't have this thing. You can leverage, your product, for example, to do that. And, because some people are trying to find reasons to not do it, to not go for Kubernetes sometimes, and it's too hard to troubleshoot and too hard. It's not anymore. And you have solutions for pretty much all, the pain points on Kubernetes those days. And you're proving that troubleshooting, alerts, and is all now. We have solutions for that. Even the cloud providers are working, or you can be, ahead of the game or ahead of the curve and use a product like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's clear for me, and I hope that's clear for people watching this. And if
Yeah.
probably there's one question that someone maybe be asking is, um, um, how should I start using that? Like, should I start from the open source? If I'm using Kubernetes already, should I go straight and use the free version? What you recommend for them to get started?
Yeah. So I'll lay out the decision tree. So
Yeah.
if you're using Kubernetes and Prometheus today, then the best offering for you will be this SaaS offering. And there's a heavy free tier on there, so you can run your AI investigations if you like, just with our AI account, and you'll get free investigations, or you can bring your own API key for Azure AI or other AI providers, and you can get started with that. But like, if you're using Kubernetes and Prometheus, and by Prometheus I mean like could be Azure Managed Prometheus, could be Grafana Cloud, any Prometheus compatible offering. We have a bunch of people with CoreLogics. If you're using both Kubernetes or OpenShift and Prometheus, then this platform is the best platform because it's really optimized for that use case, and you have all the alerts on here, and I can like see trends. So I could like go over here. Let me show that to you.
So any Azure customer that we have Azure OpenShift as well. We have AKS, Azure Kubernetes Service. They could be using that, and with the managed Grafana that we provide, from to Grafana, or even if they're using Grafana Cloud or anything else.
Exactly. And like you can get benefits here. Like I could see here, okay, here are the top alerts firing right now on this cluster, and then drill down into like a specific alert and run the investigation. So for people with Kubernetes or OpenShift, and of course supporting Azure OpenShift as well, and for people using a Prometheus-like system, then this we think is the best experience, and we're really optimized for that. And you can start for free on the SaaS. You can run this on-premise or do a POC on-premise with our commercial plans. And that's like the most complete offering. Now, for people who are either not using Kubernetes at all, but they like the concept of AIOps, and they want to be able to take this and run that AI investigation on their alerts, but maybe their alerts are coming from like, I don't know, from Zabbix, and they're related to ESX VMware virtual machines, right? Like for people who are doing something that is not Kubernetes or Prometheus related, then the open source is typically the best place to start because the open source supports everything. So the open source, you feed data in, you say, here are the tools that you can use to investigate, and you give it those integrations, and then it can go off and run those investigations. So the open source is a lot more flexible in how it can be used. It has a little bit less eye candy.
That sounds good. And you also have a web page there. I can see your web page open there. Is that where people are going to find more information about
We
the
do.
SaaS software?
The robusta.dev, robusta.dev, and we have that on here, and you can sign up for a free trial. So you would just push that button. You would need a Kubernetes cluster again to be able to do that, or an OpenShift cluster. And we are also going to be at KubeCon in Salt Lake City. I don't know, will this video come out before KubeCon?
I will publish before. I'll be there as well. Hope you see you there and meet you face to face.
So let's get this video really fast. And then I can say now in the video, I'll be at KubeCon as well. And George, looking forward to meeting you at KubeCon as well. But anyone who is listening to this, we have a booth at KubeCon. I don't remember the number, but I think it's easy to find at the conference itself. We'll be at Salt Lake City. Some of our customers will also be there. And
let's go do this demo there at your booth there. If you have a space there to show
we're going to
this.
show this, and we're going to show something really cool that didn't make its way into the
nice.
but that we're releasing either later this week or early next week. There's something really, really cool here that
is coming to
is coming, and it came from actually a major OpenShift customer in Europe in the manufacturing industry. That's one of our landmark customers, and they've been a design partner throughout this entire process. And they said, we really need this one feature, just be a game changer for us. And When we took that and we spoke to other customers as well to get some feedback on that, and we saw this idea just resonated so much. But I can't say more. You can come to the booth and see.
Let's go there. If you go back to the UI there for your UI again,
Yeah.
just to make sure people understand that you are connected to AKS clusters there. Is
Yep.
that
So I
correct?
have here the Kubernetes clusters that are connected. And
Yeah.
then if I look here at this AKS cluster, this is sending, like I've added on Alert Manager in that cluster, a webhook receiver. So he's sending the alerts to Robusta. And then we've only probably shown a fraction of the platform. Like I could go in actually, and I could look at like an application within this cluster that is unhealthy. And then I can also say like diagnose this application. I can run analysis on this application. Or I could even look at alerts. And there isn't much interesting in alerts here, but let me take a different example. I could go, let me find something. I could look at metric server, and I could like look at the logs on this, and I could even get an AI summary of the logs. So I could feed the logs in and then get a summary of all the errors that show up in the logs, right? And that's just pulling out the stuff that otherwise I might have missed.
Yeah,
And this is because like when you
it's
scan
not
this,
just that high level, chat that you're showing there. There are a lot of other features that you have there.
yeah, we have so much more. I haven't even walked through like all the ways you can use AI to shorten
Yeah.
mean time to response and to troubleshoot. But I've kind of tried to touch on what for many organizations is the most sensitive one, which is when an alert comes in that's potentially customer impacting. Someone gets paged in the middle of the night and you want them to respond in 5 minutes, not 35 minutes, and how we shave off response time there. But there are so many more features in the platform that really make it lovable for developers. Like that's one of the main things we hear back that just always makes us
Yeah.
happy is that we hear from people how like getting developers to deal with Kubernetes and with on-call and with observability, getting developers to now take on some of those responsibilities has become so much easier by giving them an AI-enabled platform, whereas before it was like pulling teeth out the platform team or the SRE team or DevOps team trying to get them to take on some of those responsibilities, but they would just go off and open tickets for the team, and then the team would have a huge backlog of tickets. So like we've seen, especially in the larger enterprises, some really, really good wins. Like if you look at metrics around number of tickets opened by developers and other stuff like that, we've seen some really, really huge successes that encourage us.
Yeah, I'm going to stop, screen for here. I think was great. I think was enough for people to, not people to understand, what you have and what the open source project is. And now just go ahead and if you're going to be at KubeCon, for sure, talk to us. I'm happy to be there as well. We talk about AKS, so using that and yeah, and please talk to us at KubeCon. I'm going to publish as soon as possible this video before KubeCon. And
I'll
if
be at
not this
Azure
one at
I'll
Salt Lake
stop
City,
by
the
to
next
say
one.
hi. So everyone comes to the Azure booth as well to say hi to George, right?
Yeah, I want to say hi for us. And if you watch this after, this KubeCon, maybe say hi on the next one. I'm pretty sure there'll be more news coming and there'll be more information. But just to finish, I like to say that a few years ago, we used to have, like weeks or days to fix a security problem, to troubleshoot things. That's becoming hours and not days anymore, not weeks anymore. And going forward, maybe in 2 years' time, if we do this talk again, maybe we talk about minutes or seconds, and there's no way to avoid AI, then all those systems will be using some kind of AI very soon, if you're not using already. And I think it's a good time to get started if you are SRE or if you're working in operations. And as a developer, I also like to say that developers should learn all those things as well, because at
But
some
we make it
stage,
easier. We make it easier. You should like would you rather prevent cavities by pulling out someone's teeth and forcing the developers, or would you rather prevent cavities by, I don't know, giving them like a candy that has a little bit of fluoride that helps their teeth? Like we water flows downhill, and you want developers to do more and to really enable developers and to get them to take on more responsibility. It really, really helps to give them better tooling and to make it easier as opposed to trying to like force them to.
Yeah, and think about if the feature is for developers to write less code and understand more the business, they also have to understand the operation in some stage, because they're going to have some time left, that they don't have to write all the code anymore. And what are they going to do if the spare time that they have? They're probably going to be doing some kind of operation, in my view. I see the developers moving a little bit in 2 or 5 years maybe, for that SIE that's going to be doing the whole thing from development to operation. That's how I see the things. And to be honest, I started my career like that, where we used to do everything. I was a
The problem
developer
is,
myself, but I used to do operations as well.
me too, me too. I also got started as an engineer, and I like got paged in the middle of the night and did operations. But I think the problem is we lost our way as an industry because we said you build it, you run it, and we mean that, and we want it, and we want developers to be more involved. But the it has gotten to be so massive. And when we used to say you build it, you run it, that meant back in the day, like when I did on call, that meant like you build it and you log in over SSH to the server that's running your PHP application. You like run top and you look at some stuff, or look at some graphs and like look at the logs for Apache, and that's it. But now you build it, you run it means you build it and you understand Kubernetes and Vault and Terraform and the autoscaler and HPA and Kata and like the metric server and Prometheus configuration. And like the it is just so big that it's not a realistic expectation anymore to expect developers to be focused on the business logic and delivering value to customers, but also for those application teams to have all the knowledge in the world. And I think like when you look at what companies like Slack have done, and Slack have written a lot about their internal developer platform that they call, I think, Bedrock. Now that term has been co-opted by AWS, but I think they call it Bedrock Slack. And like for them, building a platform meant that you could reduce the cognitive load for those developers, and that they could focus on their applications and the relevant aspects like that impact their applications, but without having to be an expert in that myriad of other technologies. So I think that's where AI is so valuable in letting you build it, you run it, and surfacing up the relevant data without expecting from you to be like the biggest expert in the company on all those things that go into the it. And like they're the ability for the people who are experts to encapsulate their knowledge in that AI platform and to guide the AI how to guide you is really valuable because it reduces the load on those platform teams, on those DevOps teams, while still enabling developers to do you build it, you run it in a reasonable manner.
Yeah, and what I like on your platform there as well, that if you don't know how to troubleshoot on Kubernetes, you also can learn with the platform, because they're going to give all the steps that they did to get the result. And you can learn how to do manually, and the hard way if you want. At least you know how the thing works, because you're showing all the the queries there, or how you got the data. That's amazing. Thank you so
Thank you.
much, and hope to catch up with everyone watching, and subscribe to the channel, and see you next time. Thank you, Nathan, for showing
My
this
pleasure.
amazing
Thank you for
product.
having me. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much.